All right, let's dive in today, huh? We're tackling a big one, posthumanism.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
We're using Cary Wolfe's What is Posthumanism? And I got to say, this book is going to seriously challenge some assumptions about, well, what it means to be human, you know?
For sure.
And to help unpack it all, we've got our expert here.
Yeah.
So, one thing that really jumped out at me, Wolfe says posthumanism.
Yeah.
It isn't just about like robots and cyborgs taking over,
Right, right.
which is, I think, what most people kind of think of, right?
Yeah, it's got a misconception.
It goes way deeper than that, right?
Absolutely.
Huh.
It really gets to the core of how we even define human,
Hmm.
especially how, you know, historically that definition's been tied to all these external things.
Like what?
Well, like religion or science or even political ideologies.
Oh, okay. So instead of looking outward for those definitions, it's about shifting the focus inward.
Exactly.
But then how is that different from, say, transhumanism? I always get those two mixed up.
Yeah, that's a common confusion. You see, transhumanism is often more about uh, enhancing human capabilities through technology,
Okay.
trying to transcend our current limitations.
Oh, right, right.
But posthumanism, it's more about challenging those very categories of human and non-human in the first place.
Mm.
It's about recognizing, I think, this interconnectedness of all things, including technology,
Yeah.
and how those boundaries are constantly blurring.
So it's less about like upgrading humans and more about understanding ourselves as part of like this larger interconnected system.
Exactly. Wolfe uses the example of social Darwinism to kind of illustrate this,
Oh, right, right.
which I think we can all agree is problematic,
Yeah, really.
trying to draw these hard lines between humans and animals, right?
Yeah.
Creating a hierarchy where certain human traits are seen as superior.
Right. And that kind of thinking has historically been used to justify some pretty awful things, unfortunately.
Exactly, and I think it's about recognizing the limitations of that kind of hierarchical thinking. Instead, posthumanism emphasizes our interconnectedness with all forms of life, challenging those traditional humanist ideals that often rely on, external forces to define what it means to be human.
Okay, I'm starting to see the difference. This whole idea of the body as a virtuality, though,
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, that sounds a little out there. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure, it's not as sci-fi as it sounds.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Our bodies are constantly shaped by the environment, our interactions with others,
Uh-huh.
and even the technologies we use. So the idea of a fixed, stable body is kind of an illusion.
Hmm.
It's more like a dynamic, constantly evolving entity.
Yeah. Are we even the same person we were yesterday,
Right.
given all the interactions and experiences that shape us on a daily basis?
Right. What we perceive as our body is really this multidimensional space that's always in flux,
Hmm.
influenced by everything around us. It's mind-bending, for sure,
Yeah.
but it helps us understand how interconnected we really are with, well, our environment and other life forms.
This is already making me rethink everything I thought I knew about being human. Wilf also talks about this concept of exmorphism. Honestly, I'm a bit lost on that one. Help me out here.
Essentially, it's saying that getting all worked up about, humans being treated as non-humans
Right.
or vice versa
Right.
might be missing the point.
Okay.
Those categories are ultimately artificial and don't reflect the complexity of our relationships with other beings.
So those distinctions aren't really that important in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the fluidity and interconnectedness of life rather than getting caught up in these rigid categories.
Okay, that's starting to click for me. But how does all of this apply to technology? I mean, we're surrounded by it, using it constantly. Does posthumanism have something to say about that?
Definitely.
Hmm.
Posthumanism highlights how we're already intertwined with technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Think about glasses, prosthetic limbs, even pacemakers.
Yeah.
We've been integrating with technology for ages.
You're right. I hadn't thought of it that way. I mean, I practically feel like an extension of my smartphone sometimes.
Right. That's a great example.
Hmm.
We rely on these external tools so much that it blurs the line between human and technology.
Yeah.
And that's a key idea in posthumanism,
Mhm.
recognizing how those boundaries are always shifting and evolving.
So it's less about fearing a future where robots take over and more about understanding how we're already kind of co-evolving with technology.
Precisely. And this raises a lot of interesting questions about our ethical responsibilities.
Like what?
Well, how do we treat these technologies? How do we ensure they're used responsibly? These are questions posthumanism wants us to grapple with.
It's like we're being asked to expand our circle of ethical consideration
Yeah.
to include not just humans, but also the technologies we create
Right.
and the environments we inhabit.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond a purely human-centered perspective and recognizing our responsibility to this larger web of life.
So where does the whole animal ethics piece fit into all of this? Wolfe spends a lot of time discussing different philosophical approaches.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it gets pretty heavy. Can you help me navigate that terrain a little bit?
Of course. It's about recognizing that our ethical responsibilities extend to animals as well, especially given how we interact with and depend on them.
Right.
Wolfe contrasts different approaches,
Yeah.
like utilitarianism, which focuses on minimizing suffering,
Uh-huh.
rights-based approaches, which grant animals inherent rights,
Huh.
similar to humans,
Okay.
and then Nussbaum's capabilities approach, which emphasizes ensuring that animals can thrive according to their own needs and capacities.
That capabilities approach sounds intriguing. Instead of just trying to minimize harm, it's about creating conditions where animals can, flourish.
Right.
It's like, how can we ensure their well-being in a world that's often designed for human convenience?
Right. And Wolfe brings in literature to illustrate these ideas.
Yeah.
He talks about J.M. Coetzee's characters, Elizabeth Costello and David Lurie,
Oh, yeah.
who really wrestle with the moral weight of animal suffering.
Yeah.
Costello especially draws these unsettling parallels between the treatment of animals in factory farms and historical atrocities.
I remember reading The Lives of Animals
Yeah.
and Costello's argument about trying to save her soul,
Right.
not just be a moral vegetarian,
Yes.
really stuck with me. It's like she's grappling with a deeper level of responsibility,
Exactly. It's not just about following rules or diets, it's about confronting our own complicity in systems that cause harm.
Right.
And Lurie, in Disgrace, his growing discomfort while euthanizing animals at the shelter that speaks to our shared vulnerability and mortality with other living beings.
It's like their stories force us to confront the emotional and ethical complexity of, human-animal relationships.
Yes.
Something that's often ignored or minimized.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this all connects to the idea that we can no longer afford to ignore the ethical implications of our actions. Especially as we learn more about animal consciousness and communication. Wolfe even brings in Derrida's theory of language here, which is fascinating, if a bit dense.
Now, hold on. Derrida, the deconstruction guy, what does that have to do with animals? I'm intrigued, but I'll admit my brain's starting to hurt a little.
I hear ya. It's heady stuff, but bear with me.
Okay.
Derrida argued that language, or any system of meaning-making, is inherently prosthetic.
Okay.
It extends beyond the individual, beyond even the human. And that has big implications for how we understand animal communication.
Okay, so we're not just talking about whether animals can speak in a way we understand.
Right.
It's about recognizing their own complex ways of communicating and interacting with each other and the world.
Exactly. And that challenges the old assumption that human language is the ultimate marker of intelligence. It's like we're finally starting to acknowledge the diverse forms of intelligence and agency that exist beyond our own limited human perspective.
Wow, this is already blowing my mind. And to think, we haven't even touched on posthumanist art yet.
Oh, we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore.
I bet.
From challenging artistic conventions to questioning our very understanding of reality itself.
Hold on, we need to catch our breath. This is a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Maybe we should take a pause here and come back to the rest of this deep dive in a bit.
That sounds like a good plan. Let's give you some time to process all of this, and we'll pick up the conversation again soon.
All right, we're back, and my brain is still buzzing a bit from our discussion about posthumanism.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in.
It's like we're peeling back layers of reality and seeing the world in, this whole new light.
It definitely challenges a lot of our assumptions, that's for sure.
One of the things that's really sticking with me is this idea of the body as a virtuality. It's like our bodies aren't just these, fixed, static things.
Right.
We're constantly being shaped by our interactions.
Yeah, with the environment, other people, even the technologies we use. Cary Wolfe argues that we can't even really talk about a body in the traditional sense anymore. It's more like this fluid, dynamic process constantly being produced and influenced by this whole network of relationships.
It makes me think about like those time-lapse videos of plants growing.
Oh, yeah.
You see how they respond to sunlight, how they twist and turn to reach for the light, like
Uh,
our bodies are doing the same thing, just on a more complex level.
that's a great analogy.
So then this idea of exmorphism,
Yeah.
you said it's about moving beyond getting upset when humans are treated like non-humans or vice versa.
Right.
Honestly, I'm still a bit fuzzy on what that actually means.
Sure, it's a tricky concept. Think of it this way. Those categories, human and non-human,
Yeah.
they're ultimately constructs.
Hmm.
They're tools we use to try and make sense of the world.
Okay.
But they don't always reflect the, messy, complex reality of our relationships with other beings.
So it's like those categories are too simplistic.
Yeah, too black and white. They don't capture the nuances of how we actually interact and connect with each other.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But how does all of this connect to our ethical responsibilities? If the lines between human and non-human are blurring, does that mean we need to rethink how we treat other beings, including animals?
Absolutely. Posthumanism really pushes us to expand our ethical considerations.
Yeah.
Wolfe talks about how our actions have consequences for the entire web of life, not just for other humans.
So it's like we're being asked to take responsibility for the well-being of the whole system, not just our own little corner of it.
Precisely. And that includes how we treat animals. Wolfe contrasts different philosophical approaches to animal ethics.
Right.
For example, utilitarianism focuses on minimizing suffering,
Mm-hmm.
while rights-based approaches argue that animals have inherent rights, similar to humans.
Mhm.
And then there's Nussbaum's capabilities approach, which emphasizes ensuring that animals have the opportunity to flourish and live according to their, species-specific needs.
I think the capabilities approach really resonates with me.
Hmm.
It's not just about preventing cruelty, it's about creating a world where animals can thrive and express their full potential.
It's a more holistic approach, recognizing the inherent worth of all living beings.
Yeah.
And literature can be a powerful tool for exploring these ethical dilemmas. Remember Elizabeth Costello?
Oh, yeah, the character from Coetzee's The Lives of Animals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's haunted by the horrors of factory farming
Right.
and draws these unsettling parallels with historical atrocities.
Her argument about trying to save her soul, not just be a moral vegetarian,
Right.
really got to me. It's
Yeah.
like she's confronting a much deeper level of responsibility.
Right.
A recognition that our treatment of animals reflects something profound about our own humanity.
And in Disgrace, Coetzee's character, David Leary, also undergoes a transformation in his relationship with animals.
Okay.
Initially, he's quite clinical and detached in his work at the animal shelter.
Right.
But over time, he develops this growing sense of unease and even empathy for the animals he's euthanizing.
It's like he's forced to confront the reality of their suffering, their vulnerability,
Yeah.
their shared mortality with us.
Exactly. And these stories highlight the importance of expanding our empathy and understanding of animal experiences.
Mhm.
We can't simply dismiss them as, other or less than human.
And speaking of challenging our assumptions about intelligence, didn't Wolfe also bring in Derrida's theory of language here?
He did.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around what deconstruction has to do with animal communication.
It's a bit of a mind bender, I know.
It is.
But essentially, Derrida argued that language, or any system of meaning-making,
Uh-huh.
isn't something that's exclusive to humans.
Hmm.
It's more like a tool or technology that we use to interact with the world and each other.
Okay.
And it's constantly evolving.
So it's not about whether animals can speak English or any other human language.
Right.
It's about recognizing that they have their own complex ways of communicating
That's right.
and making sense of their environment.
Precisely. And that challenges the traditional hierarchy that places human language at the top of the evolutionary ladder.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like we're finally starting to acknowledge the diverse forms of intelligence and communication that exist in the natural world.
This whole conversation is making me wonder if our obsession with language as like the defining characteristic of intelligence has blinded us to other forms of intelligence, other ways of being in the world.
That's a profound insight. And it's something that posthumanism really encourages us to consider.
Hmm.
It's about opening our minds to the possibility that we're not the only intelligent beings on this planet,
Right.
and that other forms of intelligence might even be able to teach us something about ourselves.
Okay, so we've talked about how posthumanism challenges our understanding of the body, our relationship with technology, and our ethical responsibilities towards animals.
Right.
But what about art? How does posthumanism influence how we create and experience art?
That's a great question. Posthumanist art often challenges traditional artistic conventions, pushing us to see the world in new and unexpected ways.
Oh, okay.
Wolfe discusses some fascinating examples,
Like what?
like the contrasting approaches of Foucault and Eduardo Cass.
Now, Suko's work is definitely not for the faint of heart. Her paintings of factory farms and slaughterhouses are incredibly powerful,
They are.
but they're also pretty disturbing.
Oh, for sure.
How does that kind of art fit into the posthumanist framework?
Coe's work is all about confronting us with the uncomfortable realities of our relationship with animals.
Hmm.
Her paintings are visceral, graphic, even grotesque at times.
Yeah.
But that's her point, you know. She wants to shake us out of our complacency, to make us see the ethical implications of our choices.
It's like she's using art as a weapon to expose the hidden violence and exploitation that underpins so much of our modern world.
Exactly. And her work challenges our anthropocentric bias, forcing us to acknowledge the suffering of other beings and our own complicity in it.
It's definitely not easy to look at, but it's important to be confronted with those uncomfortable truths. Now, Eduardo Calic takes a very different approach. He's known for his transgenic art.
Right, like that famous glow-in-the-dark bunny.
Exactly. It's definitely attention-grabbing, but how does it relate to posthumanism?
Kazakit's work is all about exploring the boundaries between art, science, and ethics in the age of biotechnology.
Okay.
The GFP bunny was created by inserting a jellyfish gene into a rabbit embryo, causing it to glow green under ultraviolet light.
Wow.
It's a provocative piece
It is.
that raises questions about our right to manipulate other species for our own, aesthetic or scientific purposes.
It's definitely pushing boundaries. It's like he's using biotechnology as an artistic medium to explore the very essence of life and our evolving relationship with it.
And his work also highlights the limitations of human perception. The glow-in-the-dark bunny, with its ability to see ultraviolet light, literally sees the world differently than we do.
Yeah, it's true.
It challenges our notion of what it means to see.
Right.
And forces us to acknowledge the existence of realities that lie beyond our limited human senses.
So it's not just about creating visually stunning art. It's about using art as a tool to expand our understanding of reality.
Yeah.
And our place within it.
Exactly. It's like both Coe and Carrick, in their own very different ways, are using art to challenge our assumptions about the human divide and our ethical responsibilities toward other beings.
And this brings us to another key aspect of posthumanism, the critique of observation. We tend to think of observation as like a neutral, objective process.
Right.
But posthumanism invites us to question that assumption.
It does.
Okay, help me out here. I mean, we're all constantly observing the world around us. What's so complicated about that?
It's more complex than it seems. Posthumanism challenges the idea of a neutral or objective observer,
Okay.
suggesting that our perspectives are always shaped by, our embodied experiences, our cultural contexts, and even the technologies we use to observe.
So there's no such thing as seeing the world as it truly is.
It's more nuanced than that. Wolfe brings in some fascinating insights from Emerson and Luhmann to unpack this.
Okay.
Emerson, the American transcendentalist, famously wrote, "I'm a god in nature, I am a weed by the wall," highlighting the paradox of our place in the universe.
It's like we're both incredibly significant, capable of shaping the world around us, and also utterly insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
It's a mind-bending idea.
Exactly. And Luhmann's systems theory adds another layer to this,
Okay.
arguing that observation itself both reduces and produces complexity. We create distinctions and categories to make sense of the world,
Right.
but those very distinctions can blind us to the interconnectedness of everything.
It's like we're constantly trying to find a balance between making sense of the world and acknowledging the limits of our own perception.
And that tension is at the heart of the posthumanist critique of observation. It's a call to be more mindful of the ways in which we shape and are shaped by the world around us. And this awareness has implications for everything from, science and technology to ethics and art.
Now, speaking of technology, didn't Wolfe also talk about how digital technologies are influencing our understanding of the world?
We did.
He used the example of Brian Eno and David Byrne's album, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts.
Yeah, which I have to admit is way before my time.
Mine too, but it's a groundbreaking album, even by today's standards.
It is.
Released back in 1981, it was one of the first albums to really embrace sampling and electronic manipulation,
Right.
creating a soundscape that was both familiar and utterly alien.
It really foreshadowed the digital world we live in today.
And Eno's video art also explores this interplay between the digital and the analog, right? And
Right.
I've heard about his fascination with video feedback.
Yeah, the creepiness of early video technology, those glitches and distortions.
Right.
He uses those to create these haunting spectral effects.
It's like he's revealing the hidden depths of the digital realm.
Yeah, the ghost in the machine, so to speak.
It's like he's reminding us that the digital world is not some disembodied realm of pure information.
Hmm.
It's still grounded in the materiality of technology with all its imperfections and quirks.
And this exploration of the spectral in digital art ties back to the posthumanist critique of observation.
Okay.
It challenges us to be more aware of how technology mediates our experiences, shaping how we perceive and interact with the world.
It's like we're constantly negotiating
Yeah.
between the physical and the digital, the real and the virtual,
Well,
trying to find our footing in a world where those boundaries are constantly shifting.
and that negotiation is at the heart of what it means to be posthuman. It's not about rejecting technology or embracing some, utopian vision of the future.
Right.
It's about critically engaging with the forces shaping our world and
Mhm.
finding new ways to understand our place within this complex, ever-evolving web of relationships.
Wow, this has been a wild ride so far.
It has.
I feel like I'm seeing the world with fresh eyes, noticing connections and complexities I never would have considered before.
That's the power of a deep dive.
It is.
It's about taking the time
Yeah.
to really explore the nuances of an idea and letting it challenge our assumptions and expand our perspectives.
And speaking of expanding our perspectives, I'm really curious to hear how posthumanism is influencing architecture and design.
Hmm.
I mean, those fields seem so focused on like functionality and aesthetics.
Right.
How does this whole philosophical framework play out in the spaces we create and inhabit?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Ooh, can't wait.
You'll be amazed at how architects and designers are incorporating posthumanist ideas into their work, creating spaces that challenge our perceptions and push the boundaries of what's possible.
All right, I'm ready for part 3. Let's see how posthumanism is shaping the very spaces we live in. Okay, so we've talked about how posthumanism changes how we think about, well, the body, technology, ethics, even art. But now we're getting into architecture and design.
Yeah.
I'm honestly having a little trouble picturing how this all fits in.
Hmm.
Can you help me out here? How are buildings and posthumanism connected?
It's more connected than you might think.
Oh.
Posthumanist architecture is really about shifting our perspective on the built environment,
Okay.
moving beyond just thinking about buildings as functional spaces
Right.
or objects of beauty for humans to use.
I see what you're saying. So much of architecture seems focused on like human needs and aesthetics.
Yeah.
What would a post-humanist approach even look like?
Well, Cary Wolfe brings up Diller plus Scofidio's Blur building.
Okay.
It was created for the Swiss Expo back in 2002,
Okay.
and it was made entirely of mist.
Whoa, a building made of mist.
Entirely of mist.
So it's not really a building in the traditional sense, is it? Not really, no.
It's more like an experience.
Exactly, and that's part of the point, right?
Hmm.
It challenges our expectations of what a building should be.
Yeah.
The Blur building wasn't about shelter or permanence.
Right.
It was about creating this ephemeral, almost otherworldly experience, I think.
Yeah.
A space that was constantly changing and interacting with the environment.
So it's about blurring those lines between like architecture and art and the natural world.
Precisely. And this idea of blurring boundaries is central to posthumanism. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things,
Yeah.
including the built environment. Some architects are even designing buildings that incorporate natural elements.
Like what?
Well, like living walls and green roofs.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some of those buildings.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing.
They are. It's like they're trying to create these little ecosystems within the urban landscape.
Exactly. It's about moving away from the idea of humans as separate from or
Yeah.
dominant over nature.
And toward a more harmonious and symbiotic relationship with our environment.
Okay, I can see how those ideas would be appealing to architects and designers.
Yeah.
But how does all of this tie back to the core principles of posthumanism?
Well, remember how we talked about how posthumanism challenges the idea of human exceptionalism?
Right, right.
It's about recognizing that we're not separate from or superior to the rest of the world. And that applies to the spaces we create as well.
So it's like instead of imposing our will on the environment, we're trying to design spaces that work in harmony with it,
Exactly.
acknowledge the agency of other life forms,
Yeah.
even the materials we use.
Precisely. Posthumanist architecture is about creating spaces that are responsive to their surroundings,
Okay.
that foster a sense of interconnectedness and respect for the non-human world.
It's making me rethink what it means to design a space that's truly livable, you know?
Hmm.
Maybe it's not just about comfort and convenience for humans, but about creating spaces that support the flourishing of all forms of life.
That's a great way to put it. And this has implications not just for individual buildings,
Right.
but for how we design our cities, our infrastructure, our entire relationship with the built environment.
This whole conversation is really making me look at the world differently.
Yeah, I think that's the point.
I'm starting to notice all these subtle ways in which our built environment shapes our thinking, our behavior,
Right.
even our values.
That's the power of posthumanism.
It is.
It's not just an abstract philosophical theory.
Yeah.
It's a way of seeing the world, a lens through which we can examine all aspects of our lives and our relationship with the world around us.
This deep dive has been incredible.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from the foundations of posthumanist thought to its expression in, well, art, architecture, even music.
It's a lot.
I feel like I have a whole new vocabulary for understanding the complexities of the world we live in.
And it's a world that's constantly evolving, which means there's always more to learn and explore.
Hmm.
Posthumanism isn't about finding all the answers. It's about asking the right questions,
Yeah.
challenging our assumptions,
Yeah.
and being open to new ways of seeing and being in the world.
So where do we go from here? What's the next step in this posthumanist journey?
Well, I think the next step is up to each of us.
Mm.
It's about taking these ideas and applying them to our own lives, our work, our communities.
Yeah.
It's about asking ourselves, how can we create a more just and sustainable future for all beings,
Right.
human and non-human alike?
That's a question worth pondering.
For sure.
I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about, and it's definitely left me with a sense of hope and possibility for the future.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks for taking this journey with us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.